And I'll start over. Hi, I'm Jenny Shanker from the Michigan Community College Association, the Center for Student Success, joined by my fantastic colleagues and excited to welcome you here to the Strengthening My Humanities meeting. Thanks, Katie. And I'm joined by my able and alert colleague, Katie Giardello, as well as I think Erica Oriens is on the line and our other staff colleague at the Center for Student Success, Precious Miller. This is us. We are a small but mighty team, and we do a lot of work around student success in Michigan. So welcome to all of you. We're excited to be here. For this project, we have put together a small steering team representing the sectors of colleges in Michigan, the higher education institutions in Michigan. This is a joint project, which we are leading at the Center for Student Success, along with partners and partnership from the Michigan Association of Universities and the Michigan Independent Colleges and Universities. And we have representatives on our steering team from each of these sectors. So welcome Amy Rosenthal, Michael Tu from Eastern Michigan, and Mike Vargo from Grand Rapids Community College. Some of you are on the line today. If you are not, anyway, welcome to the steering committee. We appreciate their help and support in guiding this project over the next few months. And as I mentioned, this is a partnership project, and our primary partner is the Community College Research Center at Columbia University, at Teachers College at Columbia University. And we have two of our researchers on the line today, so you will hear more from them later. But Susan Bickerstaff and Selena Cho will be leading the kind of the research arm of this MiHumanities project. So you'll hear more from them in a few minutes. And then we want to know more about you guys. So take a moment, if you would, to just type into the chat who you are, what institution that you're from, what discipline are you representing? Some of you I know are representing more than one discipline, and what drew you to this meeting today? So why did you come this afternoon? Really curious to see what's going on here. I think, we have been having a really good time over the past 10, 12 weeks, having conversations about the role of humanities in higher education institutions. What is the pathway to transfer and to a bachelor's degree for our community college students, and how does that look different at public universities or private colleges? Good, thank you. People are dropping their introduction in the chat, so this will be fun I won't be able to keep up with everything, but it'll be fun to look over later. And so we're really excited to have all of you kind of partnering in with us today to talk more about this really absorbing and fascinating topic. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So because we're not all from community colleges, I wanted to give you just a quick overview of the Michigan Center for Student Success. We are focused on providing state level support to our 28 community colleges in Michigan. We're really all about kind of the intersection between research, practice, and policy, particularly focused on, in this project, on the research and practice aspects of that. So we are focused on improving equitable student outcomes. And we want to support colleges and in this case, universities, in their help in supporting students to be more successful in undertaking humanities coursework and hopefully following pathways to finish their degrees. Today we're already through the first agenda item, so check that one off. This is the welcome and introductions, and then we'll be talking a little bit about the background of this project. Where did this project come from? It is an outgrowth of a couple of different large projects that we've been doing at the Center for Student Success. Some of you may have some familiarity with them. Some of you, this may be new information, so we're going to go over some of that. We're going to talk about what this project is, what's the purpose, what does this look like, what are we trying to do, what is the time period over which we'll be trying to do it, and then how you can participate in this project. So, and then finally, we'll finish up with a few discussion questions that will help to kind of focus your thinking and hopefully, open your mind to some new ideas on a Friday afternoon. It is Friday, TGIF, everyone. You've made it. As I mentioned, this project has grown out of a couple of different large initiatives. And the first one is the implementation of guided pathways across the community colleges in Michigan. So this is an initiative that is a signature initiative, become a signature initiative of the Community College Research Center, this idea of guided pathways, which grew out of this book, Redesigning America's Community Colleges, which was this is the first publication, large publication to coin the term cafeteria college, which I spent a lot of time talking about when we were introducing guided pathways. So the idea of the community college and sometimes the large university as well, as a kind of food court or cafeteria model where students stand there with a tray and they don't know where to start. Maybe they don't even know where to get the tray. And they look around and they see, oh, there's ice cream, and oh, there's pizza, and oh, there's stir-fried broccoli. And they don't really know, they don't really know where to go and what to help themselves to. And so they end up getting to their checkout line with maybe they have ice cream, maybe they have stir-fried broccoli. Probably they don't. This is analogous to this idea of students kind of wandering through the curriculum and taking courses without being really sure, even, yes, it's guided by the catalog, but community colleges in particular didn't take a lot of responsibility for guiding students. And so the idea of guided pathways is that we are building intentional structures to tell students, big signs that say, start here, eat vegetables, move in an orderly fashion, and then you will, everybody will be able to get done and check out faster. We do 300 community colleges across the country have committed to guided pathways reforms. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Many other colleges are doing this on your own. You can see kind of the dot distribution. It's of the colleges in Michigan. We've had 26 of our colleges who made a formal commitment to guided pathways over the past several years. And you can see how they're kind of distributed across the country as well. So it's a growing movement. Next. Guided pathways is kind of embodied by these 4 practice areas to map the pathways. So to make the pathways clearer to students, make the pathways clearer to ourselves, identify the courses that students need to take, identify the milestones that they need to meet to ensure that they're staying on track. The second is to help the students get on the path. So to look at our intake processes and how we guide and advise students in selecting programs of study, and how we support them while they're kind of ramping up to get started on those programs of study. Paying more attention to how students are progressing along those pathways. That's one of the hardest ones actually for colleges, because it's a real change in what we usually do. We're usually very focused on the front end and getting students in. Watching how they do move through the program is another key component of guided pathways. And then the final one, which is to ensure the students are learning, which, really should be larger than all of the rest in a way, because that is what we do most as faculty at community colleges and all types of institutions, is to ensure that students are learning, looking at learning outcomes within these programs of study. Are they well aligned to, for a community college, the idea of transfer and moving on to the upper division courses, or are they more aligned to what students will be doing when they leave higher education and get a job, we hope. And what kind of experiences are we giving them along the way, which I think is particularly important to those of us that are focused in the humanities. How do students get those kind of relevant learning experiences that are going to get them excited about continuing along their pathway? So this is just a quick look at a timeline of pathways. And we have, so we started this work, kicked this work off for the first time in 2015. So we've been at this for a while, I guess. The purpose of this slide is to say that we have been at this for a while in Michigan. This is not new territory for us. Our colleges have been working hard. If you're a community college, I see names here that I recognize as people who have been helping to lead this work for years now. We've had run 2 cohorts of colleges through our kind of basic institute, and then a second, the 2.0 institute, where we dove a little bit deeper. And then in 2018, we started a large project associated with transfer. So MiTransfer, and that was funded by a state appropriation. And Katie's going to tell you more about that in just a minute. But we have continued with the guided pathways work and helping. We've taken some deeper dives into some different aspects of the work around supporting students, whether it's strengthening developmental education or looking at new ways to support students beyond, beyond financial aid. And now we are entering into a couple of projects that are going to focus on transfer a little bit more deeply and differently, and this is one of them. But first, now I brought you up to speed with pathways, and now Katie is going to bring you up to speed with where we have been with MiTransfer, so you can kind of see again where this project came from.
Thanks, Jenny. And I also recognized some names on the line today, and we recognize some of you may be more or less familiar with these initiatives. So we felt like for a common baseline, we should give you at least a quick review, because these projects have informed the design of the current one that you're here to learn more about. So I have actually been with MCCA for about almost 6 years, actually going on 6 years, in a variety of roles. My roles change as the grants come in, and my work is focused on what the grant objectives are. And I had the good fortune of being one of the coordinators on the MiTransfer project that Jenny discussed earlier, was funded through a legislative appropriations grant for about 3 years. And I'm just going to walk you through what happened over those 3 years in case you were not present at those meetings. Some of you I know were. But we'll just give a quick review. And this data slide is a little overwhelming when you start looking at it, but there is a full report that we can offer links to if you're interested in reviewing kind of the landscape of the state transfer status in Michigan. At the beginning of our project, we worked with a researcher out of the University of Utah to do a little bit of quantitative data diving into what our transfer pathways in Michigan look like. And when I say pathways here, I really mean patterns of student behavior and student mobility. So that's what you're seeing on the screen. This is a Sankey diagram. And on the left side of the screen, you see the name of a community college. And then on the right side of the screen, you're going to see 4-year institutions that receive those transfer students from the 2-year sector. The width of the line indicates the number of the students. And so you can see how those students start to just slide all over the state as you start to look at what their transfer pathways look like. When we first started doing this project, there was some thought that we should focus on regionality and maybe do some regional agreements. When we dove into the data, we really saw that students transfer in Michigan from and to every institution in the state pretty much. And so there was more of an interest in maybe bringing faculty together to talk about curriculum alignment in the lower division so that transfer pathways could be a little bit more productive for students and the institutions. So this is just a slide that helps to justify that approach. And again, there are a number of other data sources in the report that we can share if you're interested in seeing the data more closely. The grant had two major deliverables, one being an updated Michigan Transfer Network, which previously was just a course equivalency database that was proctored by the MACRO organization, the Michigan Association for Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. The new website, which is at www.mytransfer.org, includes an updated and enhanced transfer equivalency database and lots of other cool stuff, including the Find Colleges and Universities link, which is the most popular spot on the site and is one of the only places in Michigan, because of our decentralized nature, that actually shows a picture and a map of all of our institutions of higher education that participate in the MyTransfer website, scattered throughout the state, and then offers direct links out for students who might be interested in finding more information from your campuses. We're very proud of this website, and there are some really cool features both to the public and to back-end users at the institutions that can help strategize transfer and assess transferability of courses. So this is something that I could talk for a long time about, but I won't. I'll move on to tell you more about the rest of the project. But I will let you know there is a tour on the site that gives a quick video snippet of what you can expect on the site. So if you are not familiar or you're interested in learning more or would like to share with students or other colleagues, feel free to do that at mytransfer.org. The second deliverable, which is really 10 deliverables, were multi-institutional transfer agreements. And we were calling these statewide agreements, but as you know, in Michigan, things like this are voluntary, and it was more accurate to call them multi-institutional transfer agreements. They do go around the state, geographically speaking, but not everyone has signed on to every agreement. They span 10 disciplines. We selected these disciplines under the advisement of a transfer steering committee, which is made up of representative leadership from all of the sectors of higher education throughout the state. And we used some workforce data. We used IPEDS data to see which majors were the most popular among bachelor's degree completers, and some other analysis to select these programs with the advisement of that transfer steering committee. The way they're supposed to work and the way the agreements are written is the student completes the MTA. There are designated major specific courses, which we call the MyTransfer Pathway courses. There are electives, or on the worksheets that institutions submit, they're called remaining degree requirements, which we asked universities in particular to enumerate, so that if community college students were looking at a worksheet and saw maybe 8 electives as open space in their degree program, they could cross-reference with the university or four-year college that they were interested in attending to review what those remaining degree requirements or perhaps strategic transfer electives might look like that would contribute to their bachelor's degree requirements. And then the idea is that the student transfers and hopefully has junior status and can move right into the bachelor's degree program. These are not admissions agreements, so students do still have to move through any admissions procedures, particularly second admit procedures for selective programs. So again, quick and dirty, that's what the MyTransfer pathways were. Here's how we created them. We actually, when you look at this picture, it's funny how we've been socialized to, I'm balking at it with these unmasked people sitting across from one another about to eat together. That's just where we are in the world with regard to COVID. But we had actual summits where we brought faculty together in discipline to talk through some issues around transfer in their disciplines and really work together collaboratively to try and identify common lower division coursework that could be easily advised to students at the community college to take, and then would be assured to transfer into the bachelor's program. In the back, you can see actually large sticky notes, and we had those up all over the room. And we had done some upfront intelligence where we looked through your programs and we were able to find what we thought might be common courses. And we actually used stickers. We had faculty members put stickers up on the sheets if they required that program in their bachelor's degree or offered that course in the community college catalog, so that we could start to see representatively where we might find those common course areas. And as silly as it may sound, it worked very well. And it gave us an opportunity to start building the pathways by selecting those common courses and then working on transferability, which was a little bit more complicated than the sticker model. We did write a report recently. Dr. Erica Oriens, who's the executive director of the Center for Student Success, wrote a fantastic report outlining 6 points of pride from the project from our perspective as project leaders. And really, you all did the hard work. We sort of just got to help facilitate it, and then Erica got to write about it. So that is direct linked in this PowerPoint, which we will share with you all later. And it's also on the mcca.org website. So if you would like to take a look at it and find out more about the points of pride that were behind our new MyTransfer pathways, I would certainly encourage you to do so. I have gone through a lot of information very quickly, and I soon will be turning it over to our colleagues at CCRC to share a little bit more detail about their work in this area. But I'd like to stop and see if there are questions for Jenny and I before we do that. You are welcome to unmute yourselves, or we can take questions in the chat as well. Okay, no one's jumping up. So I'm going to stop the share and invite Sue to go ahead and take over the reins. I know you have some slides that you want to show at this point.
I do. Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. And when you share your screen, you get this disconcerting thing where you can't see anything else. But okay, now I see you all.
We'll keep you posted on chat activity, Sue.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Jenny and Katie. I'm really thrilled to be here representing CCRC, and I'm here with my colleague, Selena Cho. And we are going to talk about this opportunity for partnership and the ways that it fills in some gaps in knowledge that we see in the research on community colleges, humanities education, and our enthusiasm for this opportunity to partner with Michigan to learn more. So I'm going to just speak for a few minutes now on some previous research that CCRC has done related to humanities and community colleges. And then a little bit later on, you'll hear from Selena about our role in this project and how we look forward to working with you all. Jenny and Katie did a great job of previewing a little bit about who CCRC is, who we are. We're a research organization at Teachers College at Columbia University, and we conduct research on community colleges, of course, but we also do quite a bit of research on the relationship between community colleges and other institutions, including high schools, but most saliently here, four-year institutions. And we're very interested in finding out more about opportunities to strengthen pathways for students from community colleges onto four-year institutions, if that is a student's goal. So this work definitely aligns with previous research that CCRC has done and our values and priorities in terms of supporting student success for students entering in the two-year sector. So I'm going to talk about a project that we did with funding from the Mellon Foundation. The Mellon Foundation also is funding this current project to look at community colleges and humanities education. And at the time, we really were not finding very much research on humanities education and community colleges. You can see the title of a research brief that our colleagues published, and the sub question there is, how much is there? Just trying to understand the landscape of humanities education and community colleges, particularly because the national discourse around community colleges tends to be over-focused on vocational education. So when we think about the role of community colleges in society, oftentimes that role as workforce preparation, which is obviously critical, tends to kind of crowd out other roles that the community college plays. And so this analysis that my colleagues did was focused on really trying to elevate and understand liberal arts education and the role that that plays in community colleges. So the overall narrative of these analyses that our colleagues did, and actually, Selena, if you could put a link in the chat to the papers, if folks are interested in looking at these three papers that came out of this previous project, you can find that at the link that Selena will provide. The overall narrative is that actually community colleges, course offerings and course taking in humanities, and they included some social science fields too, just because it was difficult to disentangle, and some disciplines are kind of span both, like history, for example, political science. But that overall, course offering and course taking is relatively robust in these fields in community colleges. And so you can see this one particular statistic that we pulled out here that says 40% of community college students in a single term, according to the survey data, were taking at least one humanities course. So we have this kind of narrative of decline of liberal arts education. And if you look at community colleges, you're not really seeing that narrative in the same way. And I think one outcome of these papers is just to show how important the community college sector is in offering humanities education and higher education. So here are the number of degrees awarded in humanities and liberal arts fields. And for the associate's degree, that tends to be an associates of arts. Some places do offer degrees more specifically in visual and performing arts. So you see they've sort of broken that out separately. And of course, at the bachelor's level, you're breaking these out more by discipline. So this would be a degree in English or a number of other fields. So the way of measuring these is slightly different, but you'll see this general increase in associates of arts degree recipients over time. Humanities indicators, which I referenced on the previous slide, that's an Academy of Arts and Sciences survey that is done periodically, has also shown this, and they've shown a general decline in vocational degrees starting in the 1980s and 1990s, and a general increase in associates of arts. So again, just sort of showing how important liberal arts education is to what community colleges offer. And here we're looking at, looking at the total number of credits that associate's degree completers earn, and what proportion of those are in humanities and social science fields. And so you see about a third of all program degree earners are in humanities and liberal arts fields. And even in STEM and health, a fifth of their courses through their general education requirements are humanities or social science courses. So that this is a really important sector. And I think probably everyone on this call knows this, but this I think was an important paper that my colleagues published to kind of raise the attention to this. This shows among associate's degree completers what proportion of within humanities credits, what proportion are in which field. And you'll see a slight change over time between 2009 and 2016, but around half, a little less, are in English. And then you'll see distribution across these other areas. VPA is visual and performing arts. And so that's an area that has been growing a bit. And general studies is a way of lumping in things that didn't fit into some of these other categories. And then the second paper that our colleagues wrote was looking at how course taking and course performance in community college humanities is related to success and transfer. So they found a few things related to grades in humanities and liberal arts courses. And a major finding there was that those are a strong predictor of whether students transfer to a four-year college. And they also predicted how well transfer students performed in their humanities and liberal arts courses at four-year colleges, and how likely they were to complete a bachelor's degree. So essentially, what this is showing is that your humanities education that you receive in the community college seems to set you up well for your four-year experience. They wanted to see whether humanities was a better predictor or not so great predictor as compared to other disciplines. So for example, is your performance in your community college humanities classes a better predictor of your success in four-year than STEM, or vice versa? And what they found is humanities performs about equally to these other areas. So there may be an argument in the field that says it's really important to get students into these STEM courses because that will prepare them for four-year. And it doesn't really make a difference that your humanities education prepares you for your four-year education, as does STEM relatively similarly. But that overall strong performance in your humanities courses in community college set you up for success in your four-year college. So that's the focus of that second paper. And then to complement these more quantitative analyses of course taking, my colleagues and I wrote a paper, that's the third paper that came out of this project. It was a combination of a literature review of research on humanities education in community colleges and a set of field interviews that we did relatively informally with folks leading initiatives in the community college space. We talked to department chairs. We talked to folks who had received funding from Mellon through other projects to do humanities type work in 2-year and 4-year institutions, pathways related work. And we tried to understand sort of what are we seeing in terms of the research in this field, and what are people talking about in terms of their challenges and the opportunities for humanities education in community colleges. And so one idea that I just really liked that I learned from a few folks that we interviewed is this idea that we should be thinking about humanities education in community colleges as an engine of social change. So I'm again borrowing this language here because we often talk about the community colleges as an engine of economic development. And of course that's true, but we should also be thinking about the ways in which liberal arts education among community college students is an engine of social change. And so some themes that we talk about in the paper, first is that if we want to expand and diversify the pipeline of humanities scholars, those who end up going on to become PhDs and lead in this area and teach in this area, we need to look to the community college as a way to do that. The ways that humanities education provides students an opportunity to see themselves in the curriculum. And so for students from historically marginalized communities who are trying to find their way in college, that humanities education, area studies, history, English, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I like saying these things, that provides windows and mirrors in ways that education, other discipline maybe struggle to draw those connections to students' lives. And then if you think of the role of community colleges as highly local institutions, as having a strong impact on their local community, that humanities education in community colleges is a way to promote civic and humanistic engagement in a highly local way. So those were some themes that we talk about in that paper, and those come from interviews. We also found that there's just not a lot of research on humanities education in the community college sector. So that provides justification for this current project. And we identify in this paper 3 challenges, and I think we are going to attempt to address these challenges in this current project. So one is to raise the visibility of humanities education in community colleges. As I've said, when we think about community colleges nationally, and we think about their role in society, I think for most people, humanities education is not what comes to mind first, but we know how critical it is. We also know that faculty teaching at community colleges are often part-time, and they're teaching diverse students from a range of backgrounds and a range of needs. And so a theme in our paper is talking about the need for intentional supports for faculty to meet the needs of these students, and also the ways in which humanities faculty are leaders and innovators in our educational endeavor, perhaps more so even than other disciplines. And then an explicit focus of this project is strengthening transfer pathways, because as both Jenny and Katie alluded to, transfer pathways in general between 2-year and 4-year sector tend to be relatively decentralized, sometimes confusing for students, and it's a challenging sector. And if we want students to earn bachelor's degrees in the humanities, and we want them to do that coming from community colleges, I think there are a lot of opportunities to make those pathways clearer and to provide stronger footing for students to come into a 4-year college with junior standing, ready to really take on one of these humanities majors in a 4-year college. So we talk about what we're seeing in the literature and what we're seeing in the field related to transfer pathways in that third paper that I mentioned. And in a little bit, Selena will talk about some of the ways that we want to extend this research through our partnership on this project.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions for CCRC, knowing you'll get to hear from them again more directly about their work on this project?
You mentioned that you didn't see a lot of research out there on humanities transfer. I wondered if you looked into the journal Teaching English in Two-Year Colleges out of the NCTE. I know Howard Tinberg, for example, has done a lot of work on threshold concepts in transfer courses.
I'm so glad you brought that up. So we call out TICA specifically in the paper as an example of a discipline-based support network, which is really robust, actually. And I think English in a certain way is its own entity in the community college space because of that. And so I think you're absolutely right. And I think this work kind of has to happen within disciplines, which I think speaks to the structure of this project, which Jenny and Katie will talk about. And not every discipline has that venue. And so, for example, I have a distinct memory of talking with a religion faculty member who talked about going to conferences and not really feeling connected. A two-year college religion faculty, how disconnected you can feel from your disciplinary conference when your conference is focused so largely on the four-year experience and publication and related topics. So I think English actually provides a real stellar example of the type of supports that faculty are looking for and might benefit from. And it's just uneven across the humanities disciplines.
I'm going to pull up the slides. Katie said she has crashed, so I'm going to pinch hit. Let's see. I do want to start from the beginning. It's going to make me do that. All right. Hang on, bear with me. Let's see. Let's try it like this. Okay, so now, will it let me do the show from the current slide? That's what I want to do. From the current slide, there it is. Okay. I've got it. Okay, so now we're moving to the portion of the meeting where we talk about what we're actually going to do at during this project, and it is funded, as Sue alluded to, the Mellon Foundation, who's very interested in this topic and has funded some of CCRC's previous research, has generously agreed to fund this project. And what the work that we are going to do in Michigan is focused on convening faculty from across MCCA, the MCCA colleges, the MASU colleges, and the MICU colleges to talk about strategies for strengthening existing and or building new pathways in 4 specific disciplines. And there was quite a conversation that Sue and I had as we were beginning to set up this conversation with the Mellon Foundation, because when you start working with these funders, everybody has their own definition for something, and Mellon had very strong opinions on what is and is not qualified as a humanities discipline for their purposes. We really wanted to pick one of the disciplines that we had an existing transfer pathway in. And so we picked communication. And for that one, and we got Mellon to agree with that. Some of you, I think, are here bearing the battle scars from the conversations that we had in trying to establish an English faculty as an English pathway as part of the My Transfer Pathways. We were not able to come to that agreement, but many interesting conversations came out of that room. at the West Campus of LCC that I was really excited to bring, back to the foreground in this project. History was another area where faculty were and administrators and people on the transfer steering committee were interested in building a pathway, but it didn't make the cut for the initial project. So we're excited to bring history. And then theater arts, we really wanted, so you saw Sue referring to the visual and performing arts, and this was one of the biggest push-pulls with the Mellon Foundation, is in terms of how could we get something that spoke to the performing arts aspect of the humanities, and that was how we landed on theater as a discipline that was fairly widely offered across our colleges at the community college level, and brought a different dimension to these conversations around pathways. So those are the 4 disciplines, and there could have been others. And I think that, the conversations that we have will focus on those 4 disciplines, but we hope will also be broadly applicable to other humanities disciplines, like religion, theater, philosophy, art, for example. So what we're going to do during this project is we are going to build roadmaps. So they're not the same. It's not the same as the My Transfer Pathways. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but we're going to try to develop this roadmap brief for each discipline that institutions can use as they are advising students. And these will hopefully be useful not only to community colleges trying to develop pathways for their students, but universities and independent colleges who may be looking at how can we make a stronger pathway into a humanities major for our students who are our native students, not just transfer students, but native students. A lot of times what we discovered in the conversations with faculty with the My Transfer Pathways is that a lot of the work of completing the major happens in that 3rd and 4th year for the student, the junior and senior year, and that, students maybe are also at a university might be wandering around trying to find their way into one of these majors, and that could be stronger at a 4-year institution as well. And our partners at CCRC are also going to develop some qualitative and quantitative research reports, which they'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. So, and then these additional topics. So I'm excited about this project because what we really want it to be about is time and space for faculty to get together and talk about issues that are important within their discipline. And what is the role of the humanities and humanities disciplines? And what about general education? And, a lot of the courses that students are taking in humanities are related to general education, and not necessarily because they're going to major in it, but how can these courses, whether it's a general education or whether it's part of a program of study, light the fire for students, keep them moving on the pathway, get them excited about the humanities as that engine of social change, like Sue was talking about, and what kind of experiences are happening outside the classroom for students in the humanities, and how can some of those experiences, those co-curricular experiences, be folded more deliberately into helping students light the fire and understand the role of humanities in their future life. And also, we really want to focus on how can we diversify the humanities in Michigan? How can we be sure that we are making these pathways, the pathways that we set up, the humanities experiences that we develop, equitably accessible to all of the students who are participating in higher education in Michigan, and not just available to a few students who happen to find their way there, but all of students. How can we deliberately increase equity, focus on representation of diverse students, and make those students feel included in our humanities work? I'm going to pause and look at the chat. Okay, it's just Katie saying her Zoom crashed. I hope you're back, Katie.
I'm back. I'm so sorry about that. I was so worried I brought you all down with me.
No, I just was busy loading up the slides, so I couldn't reply to your distress call. So we talked about my transfer pathways, and a lot of people, I think, are wondering about this project and how it relates to those transfer pathways. So there is a lot of similarity in this project to the transfer pathways. We are going to focus on the existing pathway in communication and how that pathway can be made stronger. We are going to try to resolve the unfinished business for the English pathway. We're going to use a lot of the tools that we used in those conversations, maybe even the dreaded sticky notes if we're ever able to be in person again, or we're going to be working on our virtual sticky note skills, to talk about how we can lay the foundation for new pathways in history and theater arts. But at the end of this project, we will not be signing multi-institute articulation agreements. If we get to the point where the faculty and the institutions agree that we have the foundation for some new agreements, then we'll move from that point, from the end of this project, into the process of creating those articulation agreements. We're going to look deeper and beyond course equivalencies. The speed at which we developed the MyTransfer pathways kind of boxed us into the kind of course equivalency, the dreaded green boxes, as the currency of the project. So as long as your course transferred and was equivalent, then that was what we were looking at, is how many institutions could we get to have how many courses that were equivalent. In this project, we're going to look deeper into that. Because the courses, as we certainly found out in our conversations with the English faculty, there are issues beyond whether or not the courses are equivalent. So what about the program learning outcomes? What does it mean in the English conversation? We talked at one point about, opportunities to define what it means to be an English major in Michigan, what it means to study English in our institutions. What can we do to acknowledge and strengthen the role of humanities in general education, and help increase the value proposition of offering courses, encouraging students to take courses in the humanities as part of their general education? How can we develop some opportunities for active and experiential learning around the humanities? And also thinking about, there's a lot of conversation out in the field about how important the humanities are to some key skills that employers are looking for. So that's one thing, this kind of group collaboration, critical thinking, clear expression in speaking and writing. But there's also opportunities for us to understand, as a collection of humanities faculty, the other kinds of skills that humanities majors might be able to develop that would make them more marketable when they leave and try to enter employment. For example, myself, as a bachelor's degree in theater major, I think back on things that I would have liked to have learned as I went, I kind of went into arts administration, which, you could do a master's in arts administration, but by the time I got my bachelor's degree, I was broke. So I didn't do that. But I think about like things that I could have learned perhaps as an undergraduate that would have been helpful, like maybe studying statistics, or a little bit more stronger of a quantitative background, or maybe I would have liked to, it's certainly, in my work today, I would like to have learned about project management and maybe earned a certification as a project manager. So those kinds of things are, hopefully there'll be space for conversation on those. How do we interrogate the value proposition for students studying humanities? I think I said that already. And the focus on the lighting the fire and teaching and learning in each discipline, and how can we make these courses that we might choose to focus on if we are looking at building a transfer pathway, how can we make those courses stronger and more valuable to students? So I'm going to pause there, because this is kind of a big area of questions, and just see if anybody has questions again about how this is similar to and how this is different from what we did in the MyTransfer pathways, if you are familiar with that project. Okay, I'm not seeing anything pop up in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to. I hid you all, so I can't see you, so you got to speak up because there were too many words on this slide. Here's one. Well, good. Oh, fantastic, Charmaine. Thank you. There's nothing that you could hear that would be better when you're presenting than that it is clear. Okay. So here are just a little bit more about that. Here's an example, for example, of the unfinished business and communication. And here's an example. Here's a picture of the dreaded sticky note. Every discipline had a parking lot. Here are some things that we talked about in the communications room that didn't get finished. Could there, what type of concentrations might be available to strengthen that pathway? What about that intro to comm course that we really wanted to use, but ended up not being able to? What about how can we talk about learning outcomes and stop just comparing courses on whether or not they have the same title? Equivalencies across the levels, additional electives. So those are the kinds of things that the comms faculty did. Those are the kinds of issues that we left on the sticky note in communication. Similarly, there was a sticky note in the unfinished English parking lot. What do we do about Comp 2 and the MTA? What about programs like film studies, teacher ed? What is an English major? I already brought that up, kind of the existential question. What do we do about diverse literature? We spent so much time on that, and then we weren't able to come to a conclusion. It was kind of heartbreaking. How do we maybe include transferability of survey courses, elective choices, things like that. So those are some examples of things that we talked about that came up in the English conversations that we weren't able to follow up on that I hope we can in this project.
Sorry, Jenny, I got to get on my soapbox because I think if you were in the English conversations, you may have been frustrated and you may have heard some of Jenny's Heartbreak Hotel sentiments under her tone. I think what happened is we ran out of time. You all surfaced some great issues. And to me, these are opportunities and not barriers. We now have the chance to come back together and pursue these opportunities under a different model. So if you were there and it felt a little heartbreaking or frustrating, I recognize that. We had some frustration in conversations with other faculty groups as well, but working through those frustrations is where you find the innovation. And so I'm looking forward to bringing some of this back up again.
Thanks, Katie. And then we have two new pathways to talk about and look at and see what issues are going to surface in those pathways, but also what opportunities are going to surface in as we look at history and theater and kind of dive into these conversations with faculty members in those areas. Oh, thank you, Jamie. Yeah. Yes, some people. I heard the frustration in the room. I heard frustration after the room, and I'm hopeful though that I also heard. I also did hear some optimism, and I feel some optimism, like Katie has pointed out, that we will have a chance to.
And part of it is the English discipline just didn't fit the model that we were using for the other transfer pathway agreements. Jenny was describing very well earlier how students can sort of meander for a little while and then they come to your majors. And I've been calling these transfer programs upper division transfer programs where, there really isn't necessarily a prescribed set of coursework in the lower division that students must take to get into your degrees. Now, some of you may have prerequisite requirements, et cetera, but where I see that that's problematic for community college advisors to try to help students select what will be most beneficial in their lower division coursework that makes up the associate degree. I also think there are some opportunities to do some things differently. And Jenny knows I have lots of ideas. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you all about ideas that you have. But if you need help, I have lots of ideas. I've been thinking about this for years now. And I actually think that we have some opportunities not only to strengthen transfer in English, but that would trickle over into other humanities disciplines, as you've heard us talking throughout, that are similar in nature. And we found in the communication area as well, where there just aren't as many directly prescribed courses, but there might be a certain number of elective courses that could be taken to fulfill major requirements that could be satisfied at a community college and help light the fire toward your discipline. So again, I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing. What happened with English, it just wasn't the right fit at that time. And now we had the chance to try something new.
Totally agree, Katie. Thank you. So let's see what's. And now I want to turn it back to Sue and Selena to talk about. So I'm going to give you just a second of background on this. That Sue and I kind of I don't remember when we first met, but we got into kind of a habit of bumping into each other in the same sessions at national conferences, and that's how we kind of was one of the genesis areas of this project, was how we can find out more about what faculty are thinking as they are engaging in these change initiatives, and looking at refining, strengthening their teaching, diving into student learning outcomes, looking at how they can contribute to these reform movements, and what is the faculty, what's going on at the institutions with the faculty. And we really had been kind of informally in search of something for, I think, probably a couple of years before we landed on this project. So now I'm going to turn it over to them to talk about what they are going to do as they're part of this partnership.
Thanks, Jenny. Yes, we do like bumping into each other in different places around the country. I'm going to reshare. And then I'm going to turn it over to Selena to talk about the research activities associated with this new project.
Thanks, Sue. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Selena Cho, and I'm a research assistant at the Community College Research Center. And today I'll be giving a little bit of an overview about the aims and activities of our research. Sue, could you go to the next slide? So first, here are some of our research goals. These are 3 goals that emerge out of our 5 research questions. Our first goal is to understand current transfer pathways for students in the humanities and to identify ways to strengthen cross-sector transfer pathways. So this first goal, like Jenny has talked about, we will really be focusing on the 4 areas: English, communication, history, and theater. But we'll have a chance to peek into some other disciplines as well in other parts of the project. Our second goal is to explore instructional strategies that promote equitable outcomes and enhance transfer success. So with this goal, this is a chance for us to look beyond like the structural administrative components and really look at what's happening in classrooms and look at classroom practices, especially like Jenny said, with that eye toward equity. We want to know what are some of these instructional practices that can help make humanities education more equitable to a more diverse set of students. Our third goal is to identify the course taking patterns and progress indicators for students who enroll in humanities courses in community colleges. So this third goal is going to be a baseline descriptive data work on past trends. So we want to look at who is taking humanities courses, who is being like successful in completing those courses, who is completing degrees in humanities fields. So this data will be disaggregated by race and ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status, again, with that eye toward equity to identify any gaps that we haven't seen before, or maybe just to, even if we knew about certain gaps, to see where they are today. So our first and second goals are really going to be addressed by qualitative research activities, and our third goal will be addressed more through quantitative research. The overarching goal of all of this is that we really want to form a feedback loop between our work and the work of the MCCA. The goal is to elevate voices of folks who are currently immersed in humanities education and guided pathways in Michigan, and giving useful information back to them. So this is not, we're hoping to establish certain data and trends and certain qualitative information that then folks in Michigan that are fully immersed in this can keep building on and keep using this for future work. The goal, this is not evaluative, so we're not trying to step in and say like, this is good, this is bad. We really just want to gain a better understanding of what's happening and what folks would like to see happen in the future. Thanks, Sue. So next I'll talk through some of our research activities. We will be doing a document review of college websites and course catalogs. And we'll also be observing virtual faculty convenings hosted by the MCCA. And these next two activities I'm particularly excited about. We'll be conducting phone interviews with select key stakeholders. So like we said, some of the research project will focus on those four areas identified in partnership with the Mellon Foundation. But these phone interviews is where we're hoping to cast a wider net to folks outside of those four areas. So we hope to be able to speak to faculty members who teach, other things like philosophy or religious studies or art. We'll also be conducting virtual or hopefully in-person site visits at 4 institutions. And these site visits are such a great chance to go deeper and to get a more comprehensive picture of what's happening, because we can speak to students and advisors in addition to faculty members. Lastly, we will be doing a quantitative analysis of disaggregated progress indicators. And again, that is to really form a descriptive baseline analysis that can be used to inform future work. So for our deliverables, we have 3 main deliverables. By December of this year, we hope to provide a memo to MCCA on our preliminary qualitative findings. So this will be from starting to observe some of those convenings and starting to have phone interviews with some stakeholders. Then in June of 2022, CCRC will be publishing a policy brief based on our findings. And in December of 2022, we will be publishing a working paper, which is like a longer, more academic research paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena. Any questions for our CCRC colleagues about the research component of this work?
Excuse me, but I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
It was on the previous slide and pardon my ignorance, but what do you mean by equitable, I think it said program outcomes? Could you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So yeah, we talked about equitable like progress indicators. So we're really looking at like disaggregated data based on like race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status of which students are currently enrolled in humanities courses, which students are pursuing humanities degrees and obtaining those degrees, and which students are really like having success through completing a bachelor's in humanities fields. Sue, do you want to speak more on that? I don't know if I
Yep, you did great, Selena. I mean, our goal here is to provide a current landscape with an eye toward providing actionable information that you all can use to, if there are gaps by race, gender, SES, which there are in most places in higher education, unfortunately, that you all would have that data in hand as you continue your work to consider and use. So we just want to make sure that we're not just looking in the aggregate at student success in the humanities, that those data that I provided earlier on which was more of a national picture, just looked in the aggregate. But given the MCCA's priorities and our own priorities and values, we want to make sure we're also looking at student subgroups and seeing opportunities for improvement.
So your word equitable has more to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and not equality, like mathematical equals.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks for the question.
Any other questions? I can't give up the opportunity to do a shameless plug. We had our friends from CCRC do a webinar for us previously this year on unpacking equity in program enrollments. And it really gets at the question that was just asked and gives a an analytic tool, literally like an Excel tool that shows you how you can disaggregate your own data toward equity outcomes. So if that's something that you didn't catch live, we have that archived on our mcca.org events area. And that program happened, I believe, in February. So if you went through the archived events, you could find it in February. Or you can always email one of us and we could send you the direct link. But it was really fantastic. And that tool is available as an open access tool for all of you to be using as well. Any other questions? I didn't see any in the chat. I'm not seeing anyone unmuting. You guys are being good sports. We're giving you a lot of information. And Jenny is going to go through what our plan is for the next couple of years with this project.
Right. So as Selena alluded to, this project will last through December of it will conclude in December of 2022. So we have about 18 months to work with here. And we have already actually got started this winter with our planning team. And that's kind of this is kind of the beginning of the culmination of that planning process, this idea of bringing all of you together, inviting all of you to come and talk to us. So we're in the leadership and planning phase. We meet regularly with our colleagues at CCRC and with the steering committee. And our next big task is to identify and convene some leads from each discipline. Starting this summer, we'll start having conversations and these will be virtual, with the leads to, we're going to use tools like Canvas. We're going to use tools like online surveys. We're going to use other digital tools, etc., to kind of build a structure for a larger conversation. So we'll have a group of faculty leads who will work beginning this spring and over the summer, and then we will start kind of some larger faculty convenings in fall of 2021. And the digital knife cuts both ways, right? It's a bummer that we can't all be together in the same room as easily as we were when we were having the My Transfer Pathways conversations. On the other hand, it's great because digital meetings are much more accessible to people who maybe don't have the time or resources to travel to a central location and spend the day meeting with colleagues. So we will start virtual faculty convenings next fall, in the fall of 2021. We'll have we'll work with those discipline leads to decide exactly, how many, when, who comes to each of those. And, like in some cases, the disciplines will meet together. In some places they'll meet separately. So those will continue in 2022. Through the fall of 2022 and the late fall of 2022, and then we'll stop so CCRC can write their paper. We'll pause so CCRC can write their paper. This project doesn't necessarily have to stop, but the funded project does end in December of 2022. So we hopefully will have, by late fall, by the end of the year, we'll have these discipline roadmaps, a paper related to each discipline that we can share broadly across the state.
Sorry, we don't make any promises, but we also have intentions of seeing what arises from all of you with regard to this project. So while this funded project may end in 22, if something develops that could be fundable, many of you who are familiar with our work know that we like to look for those fundable opportunities, and then we have some pretty decent success finding additional grant monies, particularly in the decentralized environment in Michigan. We feel pretty good about the last few years of coordination work that we've been able to do within academic communities. So we look forward to working with all of you and seeing if other projects might come out of this work as well.
So you're all here. We're really excited to have the 40 some of you on this call. And there are a couple of ways to continue to participate. So if your interest is piqued, we will want a lot of faculty discussants. And so we want you to invite your colleagues to be part of the project, kind of in a general way, to engage with the digital tools that we're going to build, to participate in the large group virtual meetings, and to help to review the roadmap deliverables. So like when we start putting the papers together, we'll probably put those out to a larger community of faculty. And we need you to be a connector and to spread the message, to recruit other faculty from your departments who might also be interested in being involved in the project without having any kind of specific heavy responsibility other than attending the meetings and discussing things with their colleagues. And then if you really feel excited about this, you might want to consider serving as a discipline lead. So we're going to get, we want to get, it's so hard to, this is one of the hardest things to say, and maybe it's because I'm an English person and not a math person. What we want is more or less two people from each discipline, from each sector of the higher education. So 2 from the public universities, 2 from the privates, 2 from the community colleges in each of the 4 disciplines. And if my rusty multiplication skills will work for me, I believe that is 24 or so people. So we're going to put together a group of 24 or so people who really want to get started right away, helping us to really shape this project and put it on its feet. We'll start having virtual meetings. We have one, actually, we've put one on the calendar for May 21st. If you want to be a lead, we want you to, you also will do this digital connections facilitating. You'll get a chance to lead the virtual meetings as a facilitator and work with us directly as we develop those roadmaps. You'll probably also have an opportunity to participate more deeply with our CCRC colleagues as they start reaching out to people who are kind of more deeply embedded in the project in their qualitative research. So if you think that you would like to be a discipline lead, we have put together a survey, and Katie, can you put the link in the chat? It's a Google form.
I can, but I'd have to, I'm sharing now, Jenny.
Oh, you're sharing. No, that's me.
Yep.
That's supposed to do that. Sorry.
That's okay. I can close the thing. We're almost done.
No, I'm here. I got it.
Okay.
I have it open for this very purpose, but just had a brain fart. Sorry about that.
We had some confusion with the sharing.
Well, yeah, and then, now I'm not sharing anymore. You're sharing. Okay, so here is the link to the leads. We also will be sending this to you via email. Another opportunity if you don't grab it. Oops.
Jenny, you sort of went on and off mute. So.
Oh, I must have hit mute. My bad.
She's sharing the chat with the link in the chat if you want to fill it out immediately. We didn't know how excited some of you would be. But otherwise, she went off when she was saying this. I will be sending you an email next week that includes the link to the recording of this program, as well as the slides that we're sharing and the link to the survey to complete by May 7th to designate your interest in becoming a lead. I can also share the direct link to the program from CCRC. I got a couple of direct messages. People were having a hard time finding that in our archived events queue. It is okay. I'm hearing that the survey might have some access issues. I will open the access here in just a moment. But the program that you're looking for with CCRC is from February the 5th. So if you can go back to that, it's called Unpacking Equity and Program Enrollment.
And I will put that in the chat. We're about to move on to kind of the discussion section of of our time together. And so when we do that, I can go and get that link, Katie. So you can go ahead and go to the
Yep, I'm going to give people just a sec, and I'm going to see if I can open the access. So those of you who are really excited to look at it right now can go for it. I know, right? We'll see if I know how to do it. This is only my second ever Google form. So
anyone with a link can access, maybe?
Yeah, I just need to change the sharing, I believe. This is a great time to see if there are other questions.
Yes, indeed, it is.
Or if anyone knows how to make this.
If anybody has any advice for Katie to help her with the form.
The other day on a call, so I was like, I need to make a footnote. Does anyone know how to do this? Because it'll be easier if you just tell me than looking up a YouTube video.
You should have invited the CIS faculty.
I know. Dang, I don't think they count as humanities, no matter what way you slice it.
So in your Google thing underneath there should be like anyone with the link can view, edit, etc. But you probably have to deploy if it's like a survey,
Okay.
because otherwise we would just be editing your document. You actually have to
Yeah.
deploy the survey.
Okay. I thought that I did. Okay. I'm going to deal with that issue later so that I'm sorry, guys. I had hoped it would be ready for you all, but I am planning to follow up with everybody next week. And I should not say promise, because my little boys hold me to that. Every time I say, but I promise, they'll say, you promised, Mom. So I'm not going to promise, but I am going to work on getting that issue figured out, and then you'll get a link to it.
And I'm going to answer the question from, I'm scrolling back to see who it was who posted in the chat.
Good job.
That yes, you do not, you can be involved in these conversations, and your college can have absolutely no commitment to doing anything. I think hopefully your participation will, spur other people at your college to become more interested, but you being part of this doesn't obligate your college to anything. Does that make sense? Oh, it's Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Cool. Well, we are looking for some feedback from you all in the next phase of the meeting. I doubt that we're going to go all the way to 3 o'clock, by the way. But if you get really excited about the conversation, we certainly can stay on. If you've used Mentimeter before, you'll know what to do. If you haven't, you can either connect with by taking a picture of this QR code. That's frankly the easiest way to participate with the mentor. If you have a smartphone nearby, literally just take it out, take a picture of the screen, and it'll take you to the mentee. If not, Jenny is going to, I believe, drop the direct link into the chat, where you just click it from the chat and go out to Mentimeter, and it will give you the first discussion prompt. Otherwise, you can go to menti.com and then use that code as well, but I would use one of the more direct.
Shockingly, it's my fault. You can't access it because I'm using the wrong link. I used the wrong link. So first of all, here's the Mentimeter link. Second of all, here is the correct link to the survey, and it's not the one where you're supposed to look at the results.
So actually, if somebody can try the survey link and give me that feedback before we close down. I thought that I had made it open access, and probably Jenny was sharing the spreadsheet link that we are going to share to see who.
You're good.
Okay, great. Yay. Okay, super. Well, is everybody done with the QR codes? Because in order to make the mentee happen, I need to take this slide down. So I want to give everybody a second if you're using the QR code. Okay, cool beans. All right, then we're going to go out of here, and I'm going to pull up the mentee. Well, I was trying to fix the Google thing, but now we're back in Mentee. Okay, good. Somebody's already responded. So you guys are so smart. I love it. Great. The QR code is working. So our first question, if you already went to the Mentee, was how, whoops.
We're in the wrong order. Yeah.
We are in the wrong order. Boo. The best laid plans.
Here it is. Word or phrase. Yes.
So hopefully I didn't ruin the whole succession of the mentee, and this is the question you're getting now if you don't have this question, go ahead and refresh whatever method you're using, and then you should be able to give some feedback on the first question, which is, what word or phrase would you use to describe the state of humanities education in Michigan? Wow. So good. Under attack, I'm feeling a little violent. That's triggering me. Confusing. Territorial. Interesting.
Economically challenged. Yes.
Yeah. It's moving very fast. Many words. Here we go. Waning, declining. Underappreciated. Disjointed. Vibrant. It's a little more positive.
Fast.
Siloed. Yeah, vast. It's a good one. Growth potential.
While we're watching the words come in, if anybody wants to unmute and explain or defend what you've entered, please feel free. Transitioning this
I'd
project.
like to say something that many students, they don't see the value of it as it translates to where they're going. You know, it's not a big priority for them.
Yeah.
So interestingly, we didn't share this, but Jenny and I also are participating in a planning grant research project where we had the opportunity to interview faculty and administrators in liberal arts programs at the community colleges and in the independent colleges and universities. And very, very resoundingly, all of the community college folks we spoke to indicated what you just described, that students don't think about humanities as a discipline to go into. They can't see the link to employment as far as selecting those program areas. And many times, especially if they're in occupational programs, they're not interested in humanities courses, even in the general education, because they don't see how it's linked to or relevant to their career plans. And we all know, as you look at research, that data would indicate that, you know, in demand skills are in demand that are taught in your programs, but it's sometimes a communications issue, and being able to communicate more clearly and consistently. That's one of the things that excites me about all of this work to bring people together, is sometimes it's a language issue. And if we all start to use more consistent or aligned or positive language, even in some ways, or slice through some of that confusion, I'm seeing a lot of opportunities represented in even some of the negative words on the slide we're looking at today. And that is what excites me about this project, because we have the chance to have some discourse and find some commonality in that language. And then consider, we've talked about different ways that we might be able to do some public outreach. Could we do videos of students who have been successful in finding great careers from humanities disciplines? Are there programs that did what Jenny described by putting in project management or some sort of communications credentials, even short-term certificates in your humanities programs, that might be good success stories to kind of open the door to innovations in the programs? Just a few things that we thought of after we had these interviews that we were doing, and then as we've been planning for this project. Seeing we're getting some feedback in the chat. Yeah. Students not valuing arts education. Administration not understanding and valuing what they offer to students. Right. It's there's not a, you're not on the same page about the value, or the values have become misunderstood, again, to use the words that you guys have on the screen, as social norms have changed, right? Or as we continue this tension around what's the philosophy of education, or the purpose, the social purpose of education. Lots of great stuff going on in the chat if you're not looking at it. We need a clear path of communication to students. Yeah, advising support. That's something that we have heard in multiple strands of our work, and we understand can be frustrating. And certainly the flip side is true. Many advisors are under-resourced or overwhelmed by their caseloads and by the really deep catalogs that they are expected to know and be able to advise appropriately on. Rise in popularity of content creation. Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to highlight the comment about how faculty from other areas embed the humanities in their course. They feel like they don't need a humanities course because they can teach humanities as part of their nursing course or as part of their another course, you know, a course, so students don't have to take a humanities course. But that's another example of misunderstanding, I think, of what the discipline of humanities and the style of humanistic thinking is all about. Let's go to the next question, maybe.
Yes, I'm deep into the chat.
I know.
But I will move us forward. And I think you're getting at the crux of some of the issues and also why it's
Mhm.
going to be exciting to be able to work through these in a multi-sector approach, because I'm reading differences by sector in some of the comments that you all are making. Certainly there are commonalities, but I see how the issues can be different depending on your sector. Okay, so we're going to go to the next mentee. Let's see if I remember how to do it. Here we go. So if you refresh whatever method you're using to connect to the mentee, you should get this next question. And once you start responding, we'll see some movement in. Jenny and I picked this because it's called the donut, and we felt like a Friday meeting needed a donut. So
Can you clarify, do you mean within your department, within your institution? Do you mean between institutions?
Cross-sector to me means between institutions. And I think that that's how Jenny wrote the question.
And between institutions, specifically around the humanities. So we know that everybody has transfer agreements in various areas, but like in your department, in your discipline, what kind of collaboration is there? The donut's really cool. Look at those wheeling around. It's really neat.
Donuts are always a good idea.
I think that's a good question, Tara, about communications, and it was interesting. You know, we can have some conversations about that when we start pulling the discipline together about how communication ended up as a humanity. And some people felt pretty strongly that it was a social science, but.
And I appreciate, I'm seeing several comments in the chat that want to divorce the issue from the employment or career focused issue and understand the higher level value of humanities to kind of the social fabric of communities and just people enriching people's lives. And I agree with that as well. That to me is a little harder of a message to get out there, but that's why I like social media. And if some of you followed our social media channels today knew, and we are looking forward to taking some of this communication online into the digital media forums so that we can try to spread the message to new and different constituent groups, because I think this is not just an insular issue in higher education. This is a public opinion issue.
Kenneth, yes, I think that would count as collaboration if you're working together with other institutions in that collegium. That's kind of an interesting group.
And I think this is about what we expected, Jenny. We thought, you know, we would have a few people who've got really strong partnerships, perhaps, and then some more that were more variable. And then again, the little or none at all to me tells me this is great timing, because this is a good opportunity to pull you all together and see if we can increase those collaborations.
I agree.
Any other comments on this or feedback anyone would like to share? I know from some of the responses I got from several of you all and others who were receiving our initial message about the project, it was loud and clear that you were looking forward to the chance to talk with your colleagues. Okay, I think we'll go to the next question. I think the donut has stopped moving. So similarly, just refresh whatever method you're connecting with us through Mentee on, and then we'll start to see some dots appear as you select some answers about what roles do the humanities currently play in your curriculum. So I think we're talking about curriculum broadly, your curriculum writ large at your institution.
It appears we can only choose one of these.
Oh, well,
bummer.
Bummer.
We meant for you to be able to choose more than one.
Well, pick your favorite. It's just like when you have multiple kids, just pick your favorite.
Darn.
Yeah. We didn't test it. We thought, go ahead and put in the chat if you want to share other ones. Feel free to go ahead and add that to the chat. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. I'm just glad the form works. I did get feedback that the actual survey form is now working. So before we end today, Jenny,
once you use the right link. So
again,
don't try to make that spreadsheet link available to everybody.
No, it's just for us. You don't have to worry about the organizing. Yeah, all. That's what we were thinking, that most of you would choose all, but not everybody maybe has that, all of that. Great question. What are the specific skills of the humanities as opposed to the social sciences? Writing, the critical skill we emphasize so much, is taught in most disciplines. Does anyone want to respond to that question? Empathy. I love that. Creative thinking. Yeah, creative problem solving. That's right, Catherine. Transfer. Yeah. We hear that a lot. We hear from some of our colleagues in the community college sector, the humanities are sometimes not a full program. And sometimes at the university level, I'm not sure our colleagues recognize that we don't have the full program. Sometimes we have multi-nested departments, if you will, and students can take preparatory coursework, but they might not actually be getting a full degree in history because the institution is choosing just an Associates of Arts program, and it's not specifically delineated to the discipline. Humanities is practice and performance rather than product. Yeah. Teamwork, that's great. Collaboration, project planning, deadline management. Yeah. Idea advocacy, I love that. Critical thinking, presentation skills, writing and speech, ethics. This is great. Listening skills. Any feedback or questions, other questions folks want to pose on this one? We have one more question and then we'll open it up to whatever you would like to share or ask before we say goodbye. Systems thinking, looking at problems holistically, seeing a bigger picture and making connections. New knowledge generation. I like that. All right, you guys are good at this chat stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to move forward to the last mentee, which I already gave you a preview of because I did something wrong on my end. But feel free, if you refresh your device, you'll be able to add some answers, or feel free at this point to go ahead and unmute and share anything you would like, feedback, reactions, or questions, because this is the end of our curated discussion. Ooh, look at those fun little. Ooh. I know. Yeah. Collaboration and bridge building. I love it. Sometimes transfer can be improved solely through that, literally finding the right people to have the right conversation with can sometimes be all it takes. Now, sometimes it's more complicated than that, but.
Advocacy resources. I like that. Yes. Meeting each other. Absolutely.
Yeah. Moving students from liking their gen ed courses to seeing them as viable majors or minors. 100%.
Threshold experiences. Yes. I love threshold concepts.
Public messaging. Yeah, I'm hearing about maybe coming together for advocacy. Again, another reason why I love social media. Hashtags can become a whole different thing. They can take on a world of their own if you get to the right people and use the right hashtags.
A rolling snowball of ideas.
Yeah, this idea of competition and collaboration being tension maybe between enrollment managers and faculty or academic affairs colleagues. Trying to scroll, but not too fast so you can see what's going on. Yeah, getting majors to find us earlier. Collegiality. Yeah. Promoting the humanities. I love it. We've talked a little bit about maybe doing some student videos where students who complete humanities programs can talk about what it did for their lives, how it enriched their lives, and how their career pathway happened. Because I do think sometimes the the problem is students can't see that clear pathway. They say, I'm going to be a nurse because I know we need nurses and I know I can get a job. But if we are able to spread the message, particularly through student storytelling, that you can also get great skills and great jobs in these major areas, they just may not be as direct or linear paths.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Charmaine, I agree. In the chat, Charmaine mentioned just from today's meeting, this idea of messaging and advocacy are very important to changing the perception on humanities majors. I agree with that. I think this is a critical issue, not unrelated to how we all feel about education as a public good or a private good and the philosophy behind educational institutions. But again, something that Jenny and I are really excited to be able to facilitate is more conversation and messaging to try and change the narrative. It looks like the responses are coming in more slowly. So I'm going to ask again if anyone cares to unmute and share any final reactions or questions for us before we end this afternoon.
Or any final thoughts from our partners at CCRC?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to say how great it's been to listen in on this conversation and to see all the wonderful ideas. So many of the things that I'm seeing here resonate with things that we've been thinking about in terms of communication and access and drawing students into these courses and pathways. So I'm excited to be able to follow up with that through our research, and it's just been a real pleasure.
Great, and we're excited to see those of you who are interested in being a lead. Go ahead and fill out the survey. We'll get back to you after the 7th of May with more information. But we will, if you're wanting to be a lead, please plan on attending a meeting on May 21st. I think it's at 1. Is that right, Katie?
I think it's at 1. Yes.
Yeah. So, mark your calendar if you signed up for it. I think it also says, talks about it in the survey, but also, we will be staying in touch with all of you, whether or not you decide that you want to serve as a lead. So, even if you feel like you just can't, you don't have time for that, but you're super interested, don't worry. We'll still be keeping in touch with you and making sure that you have opportunities to be involved.
Right. And check your emails because we are going to be looking to engage with folks digitally before we start having the large group virtual meetings, which we've shared a couple of times. But just to be very clear about next steps, if you want to be a lead, you fill out the survey. We're going to have another meeting after we invite those who've indicated interest. But then we will be following up after we get input from the leads on connecting with us digitally, whether you might fill out a survey so that we can identify topics of interest for future discussions or start to share. We've talked about using Canvas modules to be able to share information and keep some discussion boards going digitally through the summer before we might have our larger group virtual convenings.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciated the meeting too. It's been, and those other people who are expressing appreciation. It was great. It's a great way to spend some time on a Friday afternoon, and I look forward to much more exciting conversation about the humanities in Michigan. Thanks, Jamie.
Excellent. Yeah.
List, yeah.
Thank you all. You'll be hearing from me via email next week, and you can certainly follow up with any questions you may have at that time as well. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and shut us down and hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for being with us today.